The council chamber stretched 3 kilometers across, a massive dome of transparent crystal that showed the stars beyond. 200 species gathered here today, their representatives floating, sitting, or standing on platforms that adjusted to each alien physiology. The air recyclers worked overtime to keep everyone breathing their preferred atmosphere in their designated zones. Ambassador Sarah Chen stood on the human platform, her gray suit crisp and professional. She was a small woman by human standards, barely 5 feet tall with black hair tied in a neat bun. Her face showed no emotion as she watched the Grinned delegation approach the center stage. The Grinned were impressive creatures. War Primarch Threxus stood nearly 9 feet tall, his forearms crossed over his armored chest. Thick scales covered his body, colored deep crimson with black patterns that marked his military rank. His species had evolved from pack hunters on a high-gravity world, and it showed in every movement. Behind him, 6 other species stood in formation. Each one represented a warrior race that had joined the Grinned collective over the past 1,000 years. "We bring forth a formal declaration," Threxus announced. His voice boomed through the chamber's translation system, converted instantly into 200 different languages. "The species called humanity has violated our territorial agreements. They have settled 3 worlds within the disputed zone. They have ignored our warnings. They have shown disrespect to the ancient laws of expansion." A holographic display lit up the center of the chamber. It showed 3 planets orbiting a yellow star. Small human settlements dotted the surfaces, farms and mining operations and small cities. Nothing looked like a military base. "These worlds belong to the Grinned collective by right of ancient claim," Threxus continued. "Yet humans spread across them like a disease. They dig into the soil. They take resources that are not theirs. They laugh at our messages telling them to leave." Sarah Chen watched quietly. Her hands stayed folded in front of her. Her expression never changed. Around the chamber, other species began to murmur among themselves. The Plenari, a species of floating jellyfish-like creatures, pulsed with concerned colors. The Kethrin, bird-like merchants, clicked their beaks in what might have been sympathy or calculation. Most species here knew humans as traders, as diplomats, as artists who made beautiful music and sold interesting foods. Humanity had joined the Galactic Council 87 years ago, and in all that time they had never shown aggression. "The Grinned collective has been patient," Threxus said. His mandibles clicked together in what his species used as a smile. "We have sent warnings. We have filed complaints with this council. We have followed every diplomatic channel. But patience has limits. Disrespect demands correction." The hologram changed. Now it showed ranks of Grinned warships, thousands of them, ready for deployment. Other species in the chamber shifted uncomfortably. The Grinned military was famous across the galaxy. They had conquered 16 species and absorbed them into their collective. They trained from birth for war. Their ships were fast and heavily armed. Therefore, Threxus raised all 4 arms high. "The Grinned collective formally declares war on the species known as humanity. We invoke the ancient right of military correction. We will take what is ours. We will teach these soft creatures the price of disrespect." The chamber erupted in noise. Dozens of species began talking at once, their translators creating a chaos of overlapping voices. Some sounded shocked, others sounded excited at the prospect of watching a conflict. A few sounded sad, as if humanity was already defeated. The council director, an ancient being who looked like a floating brain in a containment sphere, raised its psychic voice for silence. "The human delegation will respond." All eyes turned to Sarah Chen. She stepped forward to the edge of her platform. The noise died down. Everyone wanted to hear what humanity would say. Would they beg? Would they offer tribute? Would they try to negotiate? Sarah Chen smiled. It was not a friendly smile. It was not a nervous smile. It was the kind of smile that made something cold run down Threxus's spine, though he did not understand why. "We accept," she said simply. The chamber fell completely silent. Even the background hum of life support systems seemed to fade. "We accept your declaration of war," Sarah Chen repeated, her voice calm and clear. "We acknowledge the formal state of hostilities between the Grinned collective and the United Terran systems. We will respond accordingly." Threxus leaned forward, his mandibles clicking in confusion. "You accept? Just like that?" You do not beg for mercy? You do not offer compensation? No, Sarah Chen said. You declared war. We accept. Those are the only words necessary. You understand what this means? Threxus gestured to his fleet's hologram. We have 7 species in our collective. We have 5,000 warships. We have armies numbering in the billions. You humans have been in space for less than 200 years. You have no military tradition. Your ships are designed for trade and exploration. Your colonies are soft targets with minimal defenses. I understand perfectly what you think this means, Sarah Chen replied. Her smile never wavered. Something about her tone made the chamber feel suddenly colder. Other species began to shift, uncomfortably. They could not explain why, but something felt wrong about this exchange. Sarah Chen touched her wrist communicator. Computer, public access. Historical database. Subject, Earth military history. Dates 1900 to 2100 Common Era. Unlock for Galactic Council viewing. Authorization Chen Alpha 7. A new hologram appeared beside the Vryn Warfleet. It showed a simple text file directory with thousands of entries. The list scrolled past, showing names and dates. Battle of the Somme, Stalingrad, Hiroshima, Vietnam, Operation Desert Storm. The names meant nothing to most species present. War Primarch Threxus, Sarah Chen said formally. The United Terran Systems offers you 48 hours to review these files and reconsider your declaration. This is not a negotiation. This is not a plea. This is a courtesy. You should take it. Courtesy? Threxus laughed, a harsh barking sound. You offer me courtesy? I offer you reality, human. Your species will be conquered within 6 months. Your colonies will become ours. Your people will learn their place in the galaxy. Perhaps, Sarah Chen said. Or perhaps you will learn why humanity stopped fighting itself. She turned to leave, then paused. Director, please note for the record that humanity attempted to prevent this conflict through information sharing. What happens next is the Vryn's choice. She walked toward the exit. Her 2 human aides followed her, both young men who had maintained the same unsettling calm throughout the proceeding. As the door closed behind the human delegation, the chamber erupted in conversation again. Most species were already planning how to profit from the war or avoid getting involved. A few expressed pity for humanity. They seemed doomed, but one being moved with purpose. Zilith was a historian, a member of the Kethrin species known for their obsessive collection of information. Her feathers ruffled with agitation as she accessed the human database from her personal terminal. She opened the first file at random. It was titled, World War I, 1914-1918. 40 million dead, the summary read. New weapons, poison gas, machine guns, tanks, aircraft, submarines, entire generation lost, trench warfare, artillery bombardment lasting months, chemical weapons that melted lungs. Zilith's 3 hearts began to race. She opened another file. World War II. 85 million dead. Atomic weapons. Strategic bombing of cities. Holocaust. Fire bombings. Battles with million-soldier armies. Her talons trembled as she scrolled through more files. The Korean War. The Vietnam War. The Gulf Wars. The Resource Wars. Each one detailed weapons and tactics that made her species' worst nightmares look gentle. Humans had developed chemical weapons that could kill millions. Biological agents that could wipe out cities. Nuclear weapons that could destroy planets. But it was not just the weapons that terrified her. It was the strategy. She found documents written by human military theorists. Sun Tzu, who wrote about war as an art form 2,000 years before humans reached space. Clausewitz, who described war as politics by other means. Machiavelli, who explained how to use fear and power. Humans had studied warfare the way Zilith's people studied history, with obsessive detail and complete dedication. She found casualty numbers that exceeded the total population of most council species. She found descriptions of total war, where entire nations committed every resource to destroying their enemies. She found concepts like mutually assured destruction, where humans built enough nuclear weapons to kill everyone on their planet, several times over, just to make sure no one would dare attack. And then she found something that made her blood run cold. A date. 2156. A treaty. the Unification Accords, the document that ended all human warfare and created the United Terran Systems. The introduction explained it simply. After 12,000 years of nearly continuous warfare, humanity has finally achieved peace among itself. We have learned that our greatest enemy was our own nature. We choose now to direct our energies toward exploration and cooperation. This does not mean we have forgotten our past. It means we have learned from it. Should the day come when we must defend ourselves, we will remember what we are capable of. We pray that day never comes. Xylith stood up so quickly her chair toppled backward. She had to warn the Council. She had to make them understand. Meanwhile, on the human orbital station above the Council world, Sarah Chen stepped out of her shuttle and was met by a tall man in a dark uniform. Admiral Marcus Reeves had salt and pepper hair and a face carved from stone. His uniform bore no decorations except for a simple patch. United Terran Defense Fleet. "It's done then?" he asked. "They chose war," Sarah Chen confirmed. "I gave them the 48 hours as protocol requires. I don't think they'll use it wisely." "Their mistake," Admiral Reeves said. He touched his own communicator. "All fleet elements, this is Reeves. Execute Protocol Achilles. Authorization Reeves Delta 9. Throughout human space, things began to move. Ships that had been listed as cargo vessels suddenly activated military-grade engines. Orbital stations that supposedly processed ore opened hidden weapons bays. Colony worlds that looked peaceful began systematic evacuations of all non-combatants. On Earth, in a bunker buried 5 kilometers under the Rocky Mountains, ancient computers awakened. Files that had been sealed for 200 years began to decrypt. Tactical doctrines, strategic plans, contingency protocols. Every lesson humanity had learned from thousands of years of killing each other, preserved and updated, just in case. Admiral Reeves stood at the window of the station, looking out at the stars. Somewhere out there, the Vryn were celebrating their declaration. They thought they had found easy prey. They thought humans were soft because humans chose peace. He remembered a quote from one of those old human military theorists. "The supreme art of war is to subdue the enemy without fighting." Humanity had lived by that principle for 87 years in space. They had made friends. They had traded. They had learned everything they could about every species in the galaxy, their strengths and weaknesses, their tactics and tendencies, their fears and their pride. But there was a second part to that philosophy that most people forgot. It came from another ancient strategist. If you know the enemy and know yourself, you need not fear the result of 100 battles. Humanity knew the Vryn now. They had studied them for 87 years. They knew their military doctrine, their psychology, their biology, their communication patterns, every detail, and humanity knew itself. It knew exactly what it was capable of when pushed to war. Admiral Reeves smiled the same cold smile that Sarah Chen had shown. It was the smile of a predator that had been pretending to be prey, the smile of a wolf that had been wearing sheep's clothing, the smile of a species that had climbed to the top of its food chain by being better at violence than anything else that had ever lived. 46 hours and counting, he said quietly. Let's see if they're smart enough to check their homework. Behind him, the first warships of the Terran Defense Fleet began to move into position, ships with names like Thermopylae and Verdun and Incheon, each one named after a battle where humanity had proven that it would never surrender, never quit, never stop fighting. The galaxy was about to learn a lesson that Earth had learned the hard way over 12,000 years of history. Sometimes the most dangerous thing in the universe is not the species that loves war. It is the species that learned to hate it, but never forgot how to win it. War Primarch Threxus had 46 hours left to understand this truth. He would not use them well. 23 hours had passed since the declaration of war. Xylith had not slept. Her 3 eyes were bloodshot from staring at screens, her feathers disheveled from nervous preening. Around her, in the archives section of the council station, stacks of printed documents lay scattered. Her people preferred physical copies of important information. Something about the weight of paper made knowledge feel real. She had spent every minute since the council meeting reading through the human historical database. The more she read, the more terrified she became. This was not the humanity everyone knew. This was not the species that sold delicious pastries in the station markets or played beautiful music in the entertainment districts. This was something else entirely. Something that had been hiding in plain sight. I have to show them, she muttered to herself, her translator rendering her clicks and whistles into common Galactic. They have to see what I've found. She had compiled a presentation, carefully selecting the most important information. Not the worst details because those were too horrible to believe. She chose things that could be verified, documented by humans themselves, preserved in their own historical records. Zilith activated her communicator. This is Historian Zilith to Council Director. Emergency session requested. Category: Imminent threat assessment. Priority: Maximum. The director's psychic voice entered her mind, annoyed at being disturbed. Historian: The Council does not convene emergency sessions for every minor dispute. This is not minor, Zilith insisted. Director: I have spent the last day reviewing the database that Ambassador Chen unlocked. The Grinned Collective has made a catastrophic mistake. We all have. We do not know who humans are. We do not know what they have been. There was a pause. Then the director's voice returned, curious now. Explain. I cannot explain. I must show. Please, Director. Give me 1 hour with the Council. If I am wrong, I will resign my position and never request another session. But if I am right, we may be able to prevent a genocide. Another pause. Longer this time. 1 hour. 22 hours. From now, before the Grinned grace period expires. Do not waste the Council's time, Historian. The connection ended. Zilith slumped in her chair, exhausted but determined. She had 1 hour to save 2 civilizations from each other. Across the galaxy, on the human colony world of New Hebrides, evacuation ships lifted off every 10 minutes. The planet's population of 40 million was being systematically removed. Not chaotically, not in panic. Every ship followed a precise schedule. Children and elderly went first, then non-essential, personnel, then industrial workers. The evacuation had begun within 1 hour of the war declaration. Governor Rebecca Torres stood in the command center, watching the progress on a massive holographic display. Each dot represented a transport ship. Green dots were already away. Yellow dots were loading. Red dots marked ships that had experienced delays. There were no red dots. Everything was running perfectly. Ma'am, that's the last civilian transport, her aide reported. All non-combatants are off-world. Phase 2 ready to initiate. Rebecca nodded. Execute Phase 2, full implementation. Throughout the colony, automated systems activated. Every building in the capital city received new programming. Power grids rerouted. Manufacturing facilities began producing very different products than they had yesterday. The farms on the surface looked peaceful and normal from orbit. Beneath them, construction machines were digging. Rebecca had been a logistics officer in the Terran Defense Fleet before she became a colonial governor. She knew how to move resources and people efficiently. She also knew how to prepare a battlefield. New Hebrides had 6 major cities, 3 spaceports, and a population spread across 2 continents. In 48 hours, it would become something very different. How long until the Grinned arrive? She asked. Intelligence estimates 72 hours after the grace period expires, her aide replied. They will want to demonstrate overwhelming force with their first strike. Then we have plenty of time, Rebecca said. Her voice was calm, almost casual. Make sure the volunteers know what they are signing up for. No one stays who does not want to. This is going to get ugly. Ma'am, we have 15,000 volunteers. Already. Every one of them is former military. They know what is coming. Rebecca allowed herself a small smile. Of course they do. They are human. In the council chamber, 22 hours after the declaration, Zilith stood before the assembled species. Her feathers were smoothed now. Her presentation prepared. The holographic system was loaded with her findings. She took a deep breath and began. Members of the council, I must share what I have discovered about humanity. What I am about to show you is disturbing, but it is all verified from human sources. They did not hide this information, we simply never looked. The first image appeared. It showed a battlefield from Earth's past. Trenches stretched across a muddy landscape. Bodies were scattered everywhere. The image was black and white, grainy, but the horror was clear. This is from a war called World War I, Zilith explained. It lasted 4 years. 40 million sentient beings died. The human species had a population of approximately 1.8 billion at the time. That means they killed 2% of their entire species in 4 years. Murmurs spread through the chamber. 2% would be like losing 30 entire planetary worlds. They used poison gas, Zealeth continued. They invented it specifically for this war. A chemical weapon that melted the lungs. They shot it from artillery shells into enemy trenches. Then they put on masks and walked across the corpses to attack. The next image showed soldiers wearing primitive gas masks, looking like monsters from nightmares. 21 years later, they did it again. World War II, 85 million dead, 5% of their species. They invented atomic weapons, nuclear bombs that could destroy entire cities in seconds. They used them, twice, on their own species. The chamber was silent now. Every representative was watching with growing horror. Zealeth showed them more. Strategic bombing campaigns that killed hundreds of thousands of civilians, submarine warfare, tank battles involving thousands of armored vehicles, aerial combat with thousands of aircraft, numbers that seemed impossible. But it is not just the weapons, Zealeth said. It is how they think about war. They have studied it for thousands of years. They have theorists who wrote books about strategy. I have read these books. They are terrifying. She quoted from Sun Tzu's Art of War. All warfare is based on deception. When strong, appear weak. When weak, appear strong. Attack where the enemy is unprepared. Appear where you are not expected. From Clausewitz, war is the continuation of politics by other means. It must be prosecuted with complete dedication until victory is achieved. From Machiavelli, it is better to be feared than loved. A leader must know how to use both the beast and the human. The beast part must be both lion and fox. The council director's psychic voice interrupted. Historian, these are ancient writings. Humanity has been peaceful for 87 years in our presence. That is my point, Zealeth said urgently. Look at this document. She displayed the Unification Accords. They did not forget how to fight. They chose to stop. They united their species because they nearly destroyed themselves. They have been in our space for 87 years, and in all that time, they have been learning about us. Our weapons, our tactics, our weaknesses, not because they plan to attack us, because that is what they do. They prepare for threats. War Primarch Threxus laughed from his platform. You waste our time with ancient history. Yes, humans fought each other when they were primitive. So did most species. It means nothing now. My warriors are trained from birth. My ships are built for war. Human ships are cargo haulers with small weapons attached. Are they? Zealeth asked. I checked the registry. Humanity has 127 colony worlds. Every single one is positioned near a major trade route or jump point. They call it economic opportunity. But look at this map. A galactic map appeared, showing human colonies as blue dots. Strategic military installations of various species appeared as red dots. The blue dots surrounded nearly every red dot within 10 sectors. They have placed themselves in position to control access to nearly every military stronghold in this region, Zealeth explained. Either this is the most remarkable coincidence in galactic history, or it was deliberate planning. Some council members began to shift uncomfortably. They were starting to see it, the pattern that had been invisible before. And their ships, Zealeth continued. I accessed their ship registry. They have 300 vessels listed as cargo haulers, but when I examined the technical specifications, every single one has military-grade engines, reinforced hulls, and weapon mounts that are currently empty but could be armed in hours. Speculation, Threxus snapped, but his voice had lost some of its confidence. Then explain this. Zealeth showed another document. This is a human military budget from 30 years ago. It was listed as defense spending, small compared to their total economy. But I found a note buried in the financial records. The budget includes maintenance for something called Project Achilles, a fleet maintenance program. But there is no fleet listed in their registry that matches the resource allocation. What are you saying? The council director asked. I am saying humans have been building warships in secret, probably for decades. Not to attack anyone, but to be ready just in case, because that is what their history taught them. Hope for peace, Prepare for war. At that exact moment, alarms began sounding throughout the station. Sensor operators across the council facility started receiving the same reports. Ships were appearing throughout human space. Not civilian vessels, warships, hundreds of them. A junior planetary operator accessed the council frequency. His voice panicked. Council Director, we are receiving reports from observation posts. Human military vessels are appearing near their colony worlds. They were not there an hour ago. They just arrived via jump points. Logged identifications include Thermopylae, Verdun, Incheon, Stalingrad, Midway. These names are not in any registry. Zilith pulled up the human historical database on her display. Those are battle names. Human battles. Thermopylae. 300 warriors held off an army of hundreds of thousands. Verdun. A battle that lasted 10 months with 1 million casualties. Incheon. An amphibious assault considered impossible that won a war. Stalingrad. A city fight so brutal that humans still study it centuries later. They named their warships after their worst battles, someone whispered. On the command deck of the TDS Thermopylae, Admiral Marcus Reeves stood with his hands behind, his back watching his tactical display. Around him, officers worked quietly and efficiently. There was no panic, no excitement, just professional focus. All fleet elements reporting ready status, sir, his communications officer reported. The Grinned have not yet moved their fleets. They are still in the grace period, Reeves said. We honor that, even if they think it was meaningless. His tactical officer, Commander Liu, stepped closer. Sir, intelligence reports that a historian presented information about Earth history to the Council. They know what we were now. Good, Reeves said. Maybe it will give them a chance to choose wisdom over pride. Do you think they will stand down? Reeves shook his head slowly. No. Threxus has staked his reputation on this. Backing down now would destroy his political position. He will attack, even knowing it is a mistake. Pride is often more powerful than intelligence. Then we will have to teach them, Liu said. No, Reeves corrected. We will have to defeat them. Teaching is what comes after. On his display, Reeves could see human fleet elements moving into position. Every ship was where it needed to be. Every contingency had been planned. Every officer knew their role. This was what humanity did well. They planned for the worst and hoped for the best. His communicator chirped. It was Sarah Chen. Admiral, the grace period expires in 4 hours. The Grinned have not responded to any diplomatic channels. Then we proceed as planned, Reeves confirmed. Are the colony evacuations complete? All non-combatants are off-world. Volunteers remain on New Hebrides, New Perth, and Nova Brasilia. Governor Torres reports that defensive preparations are complete. What is the volunteer count? 50,000 across all 3 worlds, all former military. All understand the mission. Reeves allowed himself a moment of pride. 50,000 humans were choosing to stay on worlds that would be attacked, knowing they might die, because someone needed to slow down the enemy and prove a point. They were not suicidal. They had plans and tactics and goals. But they accepted the risk because that was what soldiers did. Tell them help is coming, Reeves said. They just need to hold for 3 days. They know, sir. Governor Torres said to tell you, and I quote, they will give you a week if you need it. Reeves smiled slightly. That is good, because we are only going to need 3 days to shatter the Grind's confidence. In the council chamber, the session was breaking up in chaos. Multiple species were demanding answers. Others were trying to contact human representatives. A few were quietly updating their own military protocols, suddenly worried about what other species might be hiding. Zilith stood alone on her platform, watching the madness. She had tried to warn them. She had shown them the truth. But it might be too late. The grace period was running out, and the Grinned showed no signs of reconsidering. Her communicator chimed. It was Ambassador Chen. Historian Zilith, thank you for your presentation. It was accurate and fair. It did not stop the war, Zilith said sadly. No, Chen agreed. But you tried. That matters. You sought truth and shared it. That is what good historians do. What will happen now? There was a pause. The Vryn will attack. We will defend. A lot of beings will die. And then, if we are wise, both sides will choose peace. Are you not afraid? Terrified, Chen admitted. Fear is natural. But we have faced fear before. We have faced worse than the Vryn. We faced ourselves, and we survived. This is just another test. The communication ended. Zelith looked at the chaos in the chamber and made a decision. She was a historian. Her job was to record what happened and learn from it. If humanity was about to show the galaxy who they really were, someone needed to document it properly. She began recording everything, every sensor report, every tactical movement, every decision. Future generations would need to understand this. The moment when the galaxy learned that humanity had not forgotten its past, it had simply chosen to leave it behind. And when forced to remember, humanity remembered very well indeed. The grace period was almost over. In a few hours, the Vryn would attack, and the galaxy would learn why humans named their warships after their bloodiest battles. Not to celebrate violence, but to remember the cost, to never forget what war really meant. The wolves had worn sheep's clothing for 87 years. Now, it was time to take off the disguise and remind everyone what wolves were made for. The countdown continued. 3 hours and 52 minutes remaining. The grace period expired at 14 Shared Galactic Standard Time. War Primarch Threxus had spent those 48 hours preparing his forces, not reviewing human history. Pride is a powerful drug, and he was addicted to it. His fleet of 500 warships gathered at the rally point, an impressive display of military might. Each ship bristled with weapons. Each crew was trained and ready. The Vryn had conquered 16 species over their history. Humanity would be number 17. Threxus stood on the bridge of his flagship, the blood of conquest, surveying his fleet through the view screen. His forearms gestured in what his species considered a sign of dominance. Target selection confirmed. We strike at the human colony called New Hebrides. Population records show 40 million inhabitants. We will demonstrate overwhelming force. Their surrender will follow quickly. His tactical officer, a younger Vryn named Kelthix, bowed his head in acknowledgement. The target is a farming world war Primarch. Minimal defenses detected. This should be a simple operation. Simple and quick, Threxus agreed. Then the other colonies will see reason and submit without forcing us to destroy them all. We are not monsters. We prefer surrender to slaughter. The fleet jumped. Reality twisted around them as they crossed light years in seconds. They emerged in the New Hebrides system, weapons charged, shields raised, ready for immediate engagement. What they found confused them. New Hebrides sat peacefully in orbit around its star. The cities were lit up normally. Agricultural zones showed normal operations, but there were no civilian ships in orbit, no cargo haulers, no passenger transports. The orbital stations were completely empty. Where are their ships? Kelthix asked, his mandibles clicking nervously. Probably fled when they heard we were coming, Threxus said dismissively. Cowards. Send a communication. Demand their surrender. Tell them we will be merciful if they submit immediately. The communication went out. Minutes passed. No response. Came. Send ground forces, Threxus ordered. Since they will not answer, we will land and take control of their government centers. Prepare assault companies for deployment to the capital city. 50 troop transports detached from the fleet carrying 10,000 Vryn warriors. They descended through the atmosphere, following standard doctrine. Approach from multiple vectors, land at secure points around the target, converge on government centers. The Vryn had done this hundreds of times before. It was routine. The first transport landed in what appeared to be a public park near the capital city's center. The doors opened. Vryn warriors rushed out, weapons ready, expecting resistance. They found none. The park was empty. The nearby buildings were empty. Everything was silent. Something is wrong, the unit commander reported over tactical communications. There are no inhabitants. The city appears abandoned. More transports landed. More reports came in. The capital city was empty. Not destroyed, not damaged. Just empty. As if 40 million humans had simply vanished. In the command bunker 15 kilometers away, hidden underground, Governor Rebecca Torres watched the Vryn deployments on her tactical screen. Beside her, Colonel James Park commanded. What remained on the planet? 15,000 volunteers who had stayed behind. All of them were veterans. All of them knew exactly what was about to happen. All units report enemy positions confirmed, Colonel Park said calmly. They have landed exactly where we predicted. Their doctrine is very consistent. Execute Phase 3, Rebecca ordered. Full implementation. Throughout the abandoned capital city, automated systems activated. The buildings that the Vryn were cautiously entering were not empty. They were full of explosives. Every structure had been rigged during the evacuation. Civilians had left. Bombs had stayed. The capital city of New Hebrides exploded. Not all, at once. That would have been too simple. The detonations came in sequence, carefully timed. Buildings collapsed on Vryn squads. Streets cratered under their feet. Bridges fell as troops tried to cross them. Fire spread through the carefully prepared fuel lines that ran beneath the pavement. It was not a battle. It was a trap. And 10,000 Vryn warriors died in the first 20 minutes. On the blood of conquest, Threxus watched in shock as his tactical display showed unit after unit going dark. What is happening? Report! The city is destroying itself, Kelthix shouted. Every structure is booby-trapped. Our ground forces are being slaughtered. Return fire. Orbital bombardment. Destroy the city. Sir, our troops are still in there. Then, pull them out first. Get them out and then glass that entire area. But getting them out was not simple. The Vryn doctrine emphasized aggression and forward momentum. They were trained to advance, not retreat. The warriors on the ground tried to fall back to their landing zones, but the streets were filled with rubble and fire. Those who made it to their transports found another problem. The landing zones had been mined. As the transports lifted off, explosions tore through their hulls. In 3 hours of fighting, the Vryn lost 8,000 warriors. They killed exactly 0 humans because there were no humans in the city to kill. The capital was a tomb now, filled with Vryn bodies and burning debris. Threxus was shaking with rage. This is cowardice. This is not how wars are fought. Where are their armies? Where are their warriors? Perhaps we should reconsider this engagement, Kelthix suggested carefully. The humans are not fighting as we expected. We do not retreat, Threxus roared. We are Vryn. We have never lost a war. Send word to the ground commanders. Find the HFY humans. Find where they are hiding and destroy them. What remained of the Vryn ground forces spread out from the ruined capital, searching for the enemy. They found signs of habitation in the farming regions. They approached carefully this time, expecting more traps. They were right to expect them, but it did not help. Colonel Park had positioned his 15,000 volunteers across the planet's surface, using terrain that they knew intimately. The Vryn were on an alien world, following maps trying to navigate unfamiliar ground. The humans were home. They knew every valley, every forest, every cave system, and they had spent 2 days preparing surprises. The Vryn advanced into a farming valley that showed recent habitation. Buildings stood intact, equipment sat ready. It looked like the farmers had just left. A company of 200 warriors moved down the main road, weapons ready, scanning for threats. The road exploded beneath them. Not bombs this time. Mines, buried under the pavement, linked together in a chain. The entire road became a line of fire that consumed half the company in seconds. The survivors dove for cover in the buildings on either side. Automatic weapons opened fire from concealed positions in the hills surrounding the valley. The Vryn shot back, but they could not see their targets. The humans were hidden, firing from prepared positions, and then moving before return fire could find them. This was not the Vryn way of war. They believed in honorable combat. Stand and fight. Test your strength against the enemy. Win through courage and skill. But the humans were not fighting that way. They hit and ran. They used the terrain. They refused to stand still long enough to be engaged properly. It was guerrilla warfare, refined over thousands of years of human history. Ambush, attack, fade away. Never give the enemy a chance to use their superior numbers or firepower. Bleed them slowly. Break their will. The Vryn company in the valley took 3 hours to die. They called for air support. Human volunteers with stolen Vryn anti-aircraft weapons shot down the gunships. They called for reinforcement. The reinforcements drove into another minefield. By the time night fell on that valley, 200 Vryn warriors were dead. The humans had lost 12. This pattern repeated across the planet. Every time the Vryn concentrated their forces, humans scattered. Every time the Vryn pursued, they ran into traps. Every time they tried to establish a base, mortars fell on them from hidden positions. The Vryn could not pin down an enemy that refused to be pinned. In space, Threxus watched his ground forces being dismantled piece by piece. This is not war, this is murder. They strike and hide like cowards. They are fighting to win, Celtics observed quietly, not to prove honor. Our doctrine assumes the enemy will face us in proper battle. The humans have different ideas. Then we will force them to battle, Threxus decided. Orbital bombardment of all populated zones. If they hide in cities, we destroy cities. If they hide in farms, we destroy farms. We will burn this entire planet until they have nowhere left to hide. War, Primarch, that will kill millions of civilians. There are no civilians on this planet. They evacuated them. Everyone down there is a combatant, and we will treat them as such. The Vryn fleet opened fire from orbit. Energy weapons and kinetic bombardment rained down on New Hebrides. They targeted the remaining cities, the farming regions, anywhere that showed signs of human activity. The planet's surface became a landscape of fire and craters. But Rebecca Torres had prepared for this too. The underground bunkers were deep and shielded. The human forces had been dispersed specifically to survive orbital bombardment. They could not fight back against the ships above, but they could survive, and survival was its own form of victory. 3 days into the battle, Admiral Marcus Reeves received the signal he had been waiting for. Governor Torres sent a tight beam communication, heavily encrypted. Objective achieved. Enemy committed. Casualties at 32%. Can hold for 4 more days if necessary. 3 days, Reeves replied. We are moving now. The Terran defense fleet had been waiting just outside sensor range, watching the battle unfold. They had let the Vryn commit completely to New Hebrides. Now those 500 Vryn warships were in orbit around a contested planet. Their attention, focused downward, their formations spread out to maximize orbital bombardment coverage. It was exactly the tactical position Reeves wanted them in. All ships, this is Reeves. Execute Operation Sherman. Authorization confirmed. The human fleet jumped in. Not to New Hebrides. That would be too obvious. Instead, they jumped to 6 different Vryn supply bases simultaneously. Bases that humanity had carefully mapped over 87 years of peaceful coexistence. Bases that were now lightly defended because most Vryn warships were at New Hebrides. At each base, the human ships did not engage in honorable ship-to-ship combat. They dropped kinetic kill vehicles. Hunks of dense metal accelerated to ridiculous speeds. They crashed into fuel depots, repair facilities, ammunition storage. The bases exploded. Thousands of support personnel died. More importantly, the Vryn fleet at New Hebrides suddenly had no resupply chain. Threxus received the reports with growing horror. 6 bases destroyed. His logistics were crippled. His fleet could fight for maybe 3 more days before running out of ammunition and fuel, and now human warships were appearing throughout Vryn space, striking at targets with surgical precision. They planned this, Celtic said, his voice hollow. They let us attack New Hebrides knowing it was a trap. It's not a trap for our ground forces, a trap for our fleet. They wanted us committed to one location while they destroyed our support structure. Threxus looked at the tactical display. His fleet was powerful, but it was also stranded. They could continue to bombard New Hebrides until the planet was lifeless, but that would accomplish nothing. The humans had already evacuated the civilians. The volunteers on the surface were not going to surrender, and every day his fleet stayed here was a day they burned fuel and ammunition with no resupply. Pull back, he finally said, the words tasting like poison. We withdraw to defensive positions, consolidate the fleet, protect what bases remain. That will be seen as a defeat, Celtics warned. It is a tactical repositioning, Threxus insisted. We will return with proper preparation. This was merely an initial probe of human defenses. But they both knew the truth. The Vryn had committed 500 ships and 20,000 ground troops to conquering a single farming world. They had lost 70% of their ground forces and accomplished nothing except proving that humans knew how to fight very differently than expected. As the Grinned fleet withdrew from New Hebrides, a single transmission came from the planet's surface. It was Governor Rebecca Torres standing in her bunker, tired but undefeated. "Attention, Grinned fleet. You attacked one colony world. Humanity has 127. We evacuated the civilians from New Hebrides because we knew you would. Come here, we wanted you to. Every tactic you tried, we expected. Every move you made, we countered. This is what happens when you declare war on a species that studied warfare for 12,000 years. We have colonies everywhere. We will defend. Everyone. How many of your sons are you willing to spend to learn the lessons we already know?" The transmission ended. Threxus said nothing. There was nothing to say. He had been so certain this would be easy. One strike to humble the humans, then negotiations from a position of strength. Instead, his fleet was retreating. His bases were destroyed, and the entire galaxy had watched humanity make him look like a fool. On the council station, Zilith was recording everything. She had watched the entire battle unfold through sensor data and reports. She had seen the Grinned expecting honorable combat and getting guerrilla warfare. She had seen humanity demonstrate that they did not care about fighting fair. They cared about winning. She added a note to her growing historical document. The Grinned declared war expecting to face an opponent who would fight like they did. They forgot the first rule of understanding your enemy. Do not assume your enemy will fight the way you would. Understand how they actually fight. Humanity fought to win, not to prove courage. This makes them more dangerous than any species that fights for honor alone. Admiral Reeves stood on the bridge of the Thermopylae, watching the Grinned fleet retreat. His tactical officer looked satisfied, but Reeves felt no joy. Casualty report from New Hebrides? 4,812 dead, 2,300 wounded. The rest survived. Nearly 5,000 humans dead to defend an empty colony world. But they had held. They had proven a point. You can bring overwhelming force to a human world, and humans will make you bleed for it. Every single meter of ground will cost you. Send a message to all colonies, Reeves ordered. The Grinned know now that we are not easy targets. But this war is not over. They will adapt. They will learn. And they will come back with different tactics. We must be ready. This was only the beginning. The Grinned had 7 species in their collective. 500 warships was only part of their total fleet. They would regroup. They would analyze what went wrong, and they would try again. But humanity had sent a message. You can declare war on us. You can attack our worlds. You can bring your armies and your fleets. But we will not make it easy. We will not fight with honor. We will fight to survive. And we have been very, very good at surviving for a very long time. The galaxy was starting to understand what Zilith had tried to warn them about. Humanity was not peaceful because they were weak. They were peaceful because they knew exactly how terrible war could be. They had experienced it for millennia. They had perfected it into a science. And now someone had reminded them why they became experts in the first place. 2 months had passed since the Battle of New Hebrides. The war had not ended. It had expanded and evolved in ways that terrified the Galactic Council. What had started as a simple territorial dispute had become something that looked increasingly like a systematic dismantling of the Grinned Collective's military power. Zilith stood in her archive office, surrounded by reports and tactical analyses. Her feathers were permanently ruffled now from stress. She had documented every engagement, every tactical decision, every strategic move. The pattern was clear and frightening. Humanity was not just defending itself. It was waging war across 17 different fronts simultaneously, and somehow winning on all of them. On her main display, a galactic map showed the current situation. Blue markers indicated human operations. Red markers showed Grinned positions. The red markers were shrinking. The blue markers were everywhere. She had just finished reviewing the latest battle report when her communicator chirped. It was Ambassador Sarah Chen requesting a meeting. Zilith accepted immediately. She needed to understand what was happening, and the humans were the only ones who seemed to have a coherent strategy. They met in a quiet observation lounge overlooking the council station's docking bays. Chen arrived with 2 cups of something hot. Tea, she explained. An earth drink. It helps with stress. I thought you might need it. Zilith accepted the cup gratefully. The warm liquid did help somehow. Ambassador, I have been documenting this war. I need to understand. The Vryn have not surrendered, but 3 of their allied species have already withdrawn from the collective. Your forces are attacking supply lines, communication hubs, manufacturing centers. This is not defensive warfare. You are dismantling their entire military infrastructure. Chen nodded, sipping her own tea. Yes, that is exactly what we are doing. But why? You could have negotiated after New Hebrides. You proved your point. The Vryn know now that you can defend yourselves. Historian, do you know how many wars humanity fought before we unified? Chen asked. Your records show thousands. And do you know why we fought so many wars? Zilith thought about the answer. Resources? Territory? Religion? Sometimes, Chen agreed. But often we fought because we did not finish previous wars properly. We would defeat an enemy, impose harsh terms that humiliated them, and then leave. 20 years later, they would be ready for revenge, or we would win a war, take territory, but leave the enemy military intact. They would regroup and attack again. We learned eventually that you do not end wars by winning battles. You end them by removing the enemy's ability and desire to continue fighting. So you are destroying the Vryn's ability to fight? No, Chen corrected. We are destroying their will to fight. Big difference. Ability can be rebuilt. Will must be changed. The Vryn declared war because they thought we were weak. They need to learn we are not. But more importantly, they need to learn that continuing this war will cost them everything, while peace costs them nothing but pride. Zilith considered this. That is very calculated. War is calculation, Chen said simply. Violence without strategy is just murder. Strategy without violence is just politics. War is where they meet. We did not want this war, but since it was forced on us, we will end it properly, so it stays ended. On the Vryn homeworld of Vryn Prime, War Primarch Threxis sat in a council chamber with representatives of the 7 species that formed the Vryn Collective, except now there were only 4 species represented. The Kelthera, Morvax, and Prenthis had all formally withdrawn their forces and declared neutrality. Their representatives' chairs sat empty, a visible reminder of the collective's fracturing. We must consolidate our forces, Threxis was saying. His voice had lost its earlier confidence. Pull back to defensive positions around our core worlds. Make the humans fight for every meter of space. Use our superior numbers. What superior numbers? Demanded the Hixlor representative, a massive insectoid creature. We have lost 40% of our fleet in 2 months. The humans strike at our supply bases faster than we can defend them. They know where every installation is located. How? We never told them. They learned during their peaceful years. Celtix explained. He had been promoted to Threxis's primary tactical advisor after the previous one had died in a human raid. They sent traders and diplomats and tourists for 87 years. They were mapping us the entire time, not for invasion, for contingency planning. They assumed eventually someone might attack them, so they prepared information on everyone. That is paranoid, the Hixlor said. That is practical, Celtix corrected. They fought each other for millennia. They learned to always have intelligence on potential threats. It is not paranoia when your entire history teaches you that peace is temporary and threats are real. Another representative, a Vryn general named Thex, spoke up. Our troops are demoralized. They expect honorable combat. Instead, they face ambushes, traps, information warfare. The humans hacked our communication networks last week. They sent fake orders that scattered 3 of our fleets. Then they attacked. The real targets while our ships were chasing ghosts. That is cheating, someone muttered. That is war, Celtix said tiredly. We thought war had rules because we always fought species who shared our concept of honor. Humans have a different concept. They call it objective-based warfare. The objective is to win while minimizing your own casualties and maximizing enemy losses. Honor is a luxury you pursue after victory, not during battle. Threxis slammed a fist on the table. We are Vryn. We have conquered 16 species. We will not be defeated by a species that has only been in space for 200 years. Then what do you propose? The Hixlor representative asked. Because our current strategy is not working. Every engagement costs us more than it costs them. They have better intelligence. They have better tactics. They have positioned forces near all our important installations. And they seem to have an unlimited ability to adapt. Meanwhile, across 17 different star systems, human operations continued with mechanical efficiency. Captain Jennifer Okafor commanded a marine company conducting operations on a Grinned supply world. Her mission was simple: destroy the ammunition depot without killing civilians. The depot was in a city with 2 million inhabitants. Traditional bombardment would kill thousands, so humanity used a different approach. Okafor's Marines had infiltrated the city over 2 weeks, arriving as merchants and traders. Now they were positioned around the depot with precision charges and infiltration gear. "All units report ready," her sergeant whispered over tactical comms. They were crouched on a rooftop 300 meters from the target. "Civilian evacuation is complete. The surrounding blocks are empty." "How did we evacuate civilians without alerting the guards?" Okafor asked, though she knew the answer. She wanted her Marines to understand the importance. "Information warfare, ma'am. We hacked their communication systems and sent emergency notices about a gas leak. Civil authorities evacuated the area themselves. The military guards stayed at their posts, but everyone else left. And now? Now we go in quiet, set charges on the underground storage, and leave the same way. Total civilian casualties, 0. Military casualties only if they resist." The operation went exactly as planned. The Marines infiltrated using techniques perfected over centuries of special operations warfare. Pressure points, lockpicking, silent movement. They placed charges on the ammunition storage bunkers, set timers, and extracted. 20 minutes later, the depot exploded. The blast was contained underground. The surrounding city blocks were damaged but not destroyed. 0 civilian casualties. 43 military casualties from the guards who had been inside the depot. Okafor's team was already 50 kilometers away when the explosion happened, moving toward their extraction point. This was the human way. Get in, accomplish the objective, get out. Minimize collateral damage, make surgical strikes that destroyed military capability without creating martyrs. In space above a different Grinned world, the TDS Incheon conducted an information warfare operation. The ship did not fire a single weapon. Instead, it broadcast carefully crafted messages on Grinned military frequencies. False orders, fake intelligence reports, casualty lists from battles that had not happened. The goal was not to kill Grinned warriors, but to make them doubt their leadership. "Target fleet is scattering," the communications officer reported. "They received our fake orders and are repositioning to defend against an attack that is not coming. That gives our actual strike force 3 hours to hit their real target uncontested," the captain noted with satisfaction. "Inform Admiral Reeves. Operation is successful." This was happening across the entire war zone. Humans were not just fighting with weapons, they were fighting with information, psychology, careful strikes, and strategic positioning. The Grinned military was larger, but it was designed for direct combat. Humanity's military was designed for everything. On a prisoner transport ship heading toward a secure facility, a captured Grinned officer named Trexel sat in a clean, well-lit cell. He had been captured 3 weeks ago when his unit was ambushed. He expected torture, maybe execution. Instead, he received medical care for his injuries, regular meals, and quarters that were small but comfortable. A human doctor visited him daily to check on his healing wounds. A human linguist came to interview him about Grinned culture and history, not military information. It was confusing and disturbing. Today, a human officer came to speak with him. Admiral Marcus Reeves himself, commander of the Terran Defense Fleet. Trexel stood at attention as much as his injuries allowed. "Sit," Reeves said gently. "You are injured. No need for formality." Trexel sat, wary. "Why are you here?" "To ask you a question," Reeves said. He pulled up a chair and sat across from Trexel, treating him like an equal despite being his prisoner. "Why did the Grinned Collective declare war on humanity?" "Because you took our territory," Trexel said automatically. "Did we? Those 3 colony worlds were in disputed space. Multiple species had claims. We filed proper colonization requests with the Council. They were approved. We followed all protocols." Trexel hesitated. "War Primarch Threxus said you showed disrespect. And what do you think?" Reeves asked. "I think." Trexel stopped. It was dangerous to question the war Primarch. But he was a prisoner now. What more could they do to him? I think it was about pride. The Vryn have never been refused anything. When you settled those worlds despite our objections, it made us look weak, so we declared war to prove we were strong. And now? Reeves asked. Now we are losing a war we should have won. You fight without honor. You strike at our supply lines like cowards. You use trickery instead of facing us in battle. Reeves nodded, as if he expected this answer. Let me show you something. He pulled out a tablet and handed it to Trexul. These are casualty figures. Vryn versus human. Trexul looked at the numbers. His mandibles clicked in shock. This says you have killed 40,000 Vryn warriors but lost only 8,000 of your own. This cannot be accurate. It is accurate, Reeves confirmed. Do you know why the ratio is so uneven? Because you use dishonorable tactics. No, Reeves corrected. Because we use effective tactics. Honor is a word warriors use to describe fighting in ways that make them feel good about themselves. But war is not about feeling good. It is about achieving objectives while protecting your own people. Every Vryn warrior who dies is someone's son or daughter. Every human who dies is someone's family member. I do not want any of them to die, but if I must choose, I will always choose to protect my people first. He pulled up another document on the tablet. This is a peace treaty. Fair terms, no reparations. No territorial concessions beyond withdrawing from the 3 disputed worlds. No punishment for the Vryn collective. Just an end to hostilities and a mutual defense pact. Trexul stared at the document. Why would you offer this? You are winning. Because winning is not the same as achieving peace, Reeves explained. We can destroy the Vryn military. We could probably conquer your worlds if we wanted to. But then what? You would hate us. You would rebuild. 20 years from now we would fight again, or someone else would attack you and we would have to choose whether to let you fall or defend you. It is better to make peace now, while both sides can do so with dignity. War Primarch Threxus will never accept this. Then War Primarch Threxus will lose everything he has tried to protect. Reeves said simply. Pride is expensive, Officer Trexul. Sometimes too expensive. Back on Vryn Prime, the collective was breaking apart. The Hixlor representative stood up abruptly. We are withdrawing from this war. The humans have offered us separate peace terms, generous terms. We would be fools not to accept. You are abandoning your allies, Threxus roared. We are saving our people from a war that cannot be won, the Hixlor shot back. You led us into this disaster with your pride. You said it would be easy. You said humans were weak, you were wrong, admit it. Never. Then you can fight alone, the Hixlor said, and walked out. The chamber erupted in arguments. By the end of the meeting, only 2 species remained committed to the war. The Vryn themselves and the Crix, a militant species that valued honor above survival. 4 species had formally withdrawn. The collective was no longer collective. Kelthix approached Threxus after the others had left. War Primarch, we must consider the peace terms. We cannot win this war. The humans have superior intelligence, superior tactics, and unlimited patience. They are slowly dismantling everything we have built. And if we accept peace, we look weak, Threxus said bitterly. We look weak now, Kelthix pointed out. Accepting peace from a position of strength would have been wise. Accepting it from our current position is necessary for survival. Which is more important? Pride or the lives of our people? Threxus was silent. He had spent his entire life believing that strength and honor were the same thing. Now he was learning they could be opposites. Strength sometimes meant knowing when to stop fighting. Honor sometimes meant swallowing your pride for the greater good. They are offering another path, Kelthix continued. One where we do not lose everything, where we can rebuild and live alongside them as equals rather than as conquered enemies. That is not weakness. That is wisdom. But Threxus was not ready to accept wisdom. Not yet. Assemble the remaining fleets. We will launch one final offensive. We will strike at Earth itself. If we cannot win the war, we will at least prove that we can hurt them. Kelthix closed his eyes in despair. That is suicide. That is glory, Threxus insisted. Better to die fighting than to live in shame. On the Thermopylae, Admiral Reeves received intelligence that the Vryn were gathering their remaining forces for a major offensive. The target was obvious: Earth, the human homeworld, the symbolic heart of human civilization. They are going to try to hit us where it hurts most, his tactical officer observed. Yes, Reeves agreed. It is what I would do if I was desperate and proud and unwilling to accept defeat. What are your orders? Reeves looked at the tactical display. Earth's defenses were formidable, built up over 2 centuries of careful preparation. The orbital defense grid could handle anything the Vryn threw at them. But there would be casualties. Ships would be destroyed. People would die. We let them come, Reeves decided. We defend Earth. We show them that even striking at our heart will not break us. And then, when they have exhausted themselves and their pride has been satisfied, we offer peace one final time. Either they accept, or we end this war permanently. And if they choose to keep fighting, then we show them what total war really means, Reeves said quietly. We have been gentle so far. Surgical strikes, minimal casualties, tactical operations, but if they force us to, we will demonstrate why our ancestors invented concepts like strategic bombing and unrestricted warfare and total victory. We pray it does not come to that, but we are prepared if it does. The final battle was coming. Earth waited. The Vryn gathered their fleet, and the galaxy watched to see how this war would end, hoping desperately that both sides would find wisdom before pride destroyed them both. The Vryn fleet was impressive even in desperation. 500 warships had become 300 over the course of 2 months of warfare. Now those 300 ships gathered at a rally point just 3 light years from Earth. War Primarch Threxus stood on the bridge of the blood of conquest, knowing this was likely his final battle. Pride demanded he make it memorable. All fleet elements report ready, Kelthix announced. His voice carried resignation. He had argued against this attack, but Threxus had overruled him. Now he would do his duty, even knowing it was probably futile. Target is the human homeworld. Threxus addressed his fleet over the general channel. They have hurt us. They have embarrassed us. They have proven to be more cunning than we expected. But we are Vryn. We do not surrender. We do not retreat. If this is to be our final battle, we will make it one that the galaxy remembers. The fleet jumped. Reality twisted. Around them, they emerged in the Sol system, Earth's home system, weapons charged and shields raised. What they saw made even Threxus pause. Earth hung in space like a blue jewel, beautiful and peaceful looking. But around it, stretching for millions of kilometers, was a defense grid that dwarfed anything the Vryn had ever encountered. Orbital stations bristled with weapons. Satellites formed a web of sensors and missile platforms. The asteroid belt between Mars and Jupiter had been weaponized, chunks of rock equipped with engines and guidance systems, ready to become kinetic kill vehicles. And beyond all that, waiting calmly in formation, was the full strength of the Terran defense fleet. Not the 300 ships they had been fighting throughout the war. More than 1,000 ships bearing names like Waterloo, Gettysburg, Kursk, Normandy. Every major battle in human history was represented. Ships that had been hidden, reserved, kept secret for exactly this moment. They were holding back, Kelthix whispered. All this time, they were holding back. On the TDS Thermopylae, Admiral Marcus Reeves watched the Vryn fleet arrange itself for attack. His tactical display showed every enemy ship, their positions, their capabilities. Decades of intelligence gathering had given humanity complete information on Vryn military technology. There would be no surprises. Admiral, we could destroy them before they even get within weapons range, his tactical officer noted. Earth's orbital defenses alone could handle this. I know, Reeves said, but we will give them a chance to see what they are facing. Let them understand that attacking Earth was never going to succeed. Let them choose wisdom. He opened a communication channel to the Vryn fleet. War Primarch Threxus, this is Admiral Marcus Reeves of the Terran Defense Fleet. You are in Earth's home system. You see now the defenses we have prepared. You understand that your attack cannot succeed. I offer you one final opportunity. Stand down. Accept peace. No more of your warriors need to die today. Threxus's response came quickly. We are Vryn. We do not surrender to those who fight without honor. Then you will die with honor, Reeves replied calmly. I respect that choice, even though I think it is foolish. All ships, defensive formation Delta. Let them make the first move. We will show them why you do not attack Earth. The Vryn fleet advanced. They came in 3 waves, a standard Vryn tactic. The first wave would absorb the initial defenses and create openings. The second wave would exploit those openings. The third wave would finish any remaining resistance. It had worked against 16 species before. It did not work against humanity. The first wave crossed the outer defense perimeter. Immediately they faced missile swarms launched from the asteroid belt. Not simple explosives. Smart missiles with adaptive AI that learned from each near miss and adjusted their approach. The Vryn point defense systems worked frantically, destroying hundreds of missiles. But thousands more kept coming. 30 ships from the first wave were destroyed before they could even return fire. The survivors pushed forward, determined to at least damage the enemy before dying. They entered range of the orbital defense platforms and opened fire. Earth's shields lit up like a star as the Vryn energy weapons struck them. But the shields held. They had been designed to withstand sustained bombardment from a force much larger than 300 ships. The platforms returned fire with railguns, accelerating projectiles to incredible speeds. The kinetic impacts tore through Vryn shields and armor. The first wave was obliterated in 17 minutes. Not a single Vryn ship survived to reach low orbit. Second wave, advance, Threxus ordered, his voice tight with anger and something that might have been fear. The second wave tried a different approach. They spread out, attempting to divide Earth's defenses. But the defense grid was designed for exactly this tactic. Platforms shifted focus. The asteroid belt's weaponized rocks began moving, repositioning to intercept the spread-out formation. And then the Terran defense fleet engaged. Not all of it. Just one division, 50 ships, moving with perfect coordination. They did not charge forward like heroic warriors. They maintained optimal firing positions supporting each other, creating overlapping fields of fire that left no safe approach for the Vryn. The second wave lasted 23 minutes. 40 ships destroyed. The survivors retreated back to the rally point, damaged and demoralized. On the blood of conquest, Celtics turned to Threxus. War Primarch, we cannot win this battle. We have lost half our force and have not even damaged their defenses, please. Accept the peace terms before we lose everything. Threxus stared at the tactical display. His forearms trembled with suppressed rage and despair. His entire life had been built on the belief that strength and honor would always triumph. Now he faced an enemy that was stronger, more prepared, and had only been using a fraction of its power throughout the war. They held back, he said quietly. All those battles we fought, they could have crushed us at any time. They were trying to minimize casualties. Yes, Celtics confirmed, because they understand war better than we do. They know that the goal is not to kill your enemy. The goal is to make your enemy stop fighting. They tried to do that with minimal force. Now they are showing us what happens if minimal force is not enough. On Earth's surface in the city of Geneva, 6 billion humans watched the battle unfold on their screens. There was no panic. The orbital defense grid was holding perfectly. The fleet was in position. Everything was going according to plan. Children went to school. People went to work. Life continued because humans had learned long ago that panicking during a crisis only made things worse. In a school classroom, a teacher explained to her students what was happening. Those ships up there want to attack our home, but we prepared for this. We built defenses. We trained our military. We hoped we would never need them, but we were ready just in case. Will they hurt us? A child asked. No, the teacher said with confidence. Because our ancestors learned hard lessons about how to protect themselves, and they taught us. We remember those lessons even though we hope to never need them again. On the Thermopylae, Reeves received a message from the blood of conquest. It was Celtics, not Threxus. Admiral Reeves, this is Tactical Advisor Celtics. War Primarch Threxus is not currently able to make decisions. The Vryn fleet requests terms of surrender. Stand by, Reeves replied. He switched to a command channel. All ships, ceasefire. The enemy is requesting terms. Do not fire unless fired upon. Then he responded to Celtics. These are the terms: full cessation of hostilities, withdrawal from all contested territories, formal peace treaty to be negotiated on neutral ground, no reparations, no punishments, a clean end to the war. Do you accept? There was a long pause. Then Celtics replied, We accept. I am transmitting our surrender to all Grinned ships. Please allow us to recover our dead and depart in peace. Granted, Reeves said. You may collect your casualties. Medical assistance will be provided if needed. You are not our enemies anymore. You are beings who made a mistake and are choosing to correct it. We respect that choice. But Threxus had not surrendered in his heart. As the fleet prepared to withdraw, he ordered his ship to break formation. The blood of conquest turned and accelerated toward Earth, weapons charging for a suicide run. War Primarch, what are you doing? Celtic shouted. We surrendered. I did not, Threxus snarled. I will not live in shame. If I die striking at Earth, at least I die as a warrior should. The blood of conquest accelerated toward the planet. Alarms sounded across the human fleet. The ship was moving too fast to be intercepted. It would reach Earth's upper atmosphere before they could stop it. But humanity had prepared for this too. For the suicidal enemy who would rather die than accept defeat. 3 orbital defense platforms shifted their fire, not to destroy the ship, which would create debris that might still hit Earth. Instead, they fired focused electromagnetic pulses that overloaded the blood of conquest's engines and shields. The ship went dead in space, drifting harmlessly. A boarding team from the Thermopylae docked with the disabled flagship. They found Threxus on the bridge, held at gunpoint by his own crew. Celtics had stunned the War Primarch with a shock weapon, preventing him from completing his suicide attack. He has gone mad with shame, Celtics explained to the human Marines who entered the bridge. He cannot accept that we lost to you. Then we will help him learn to accept it, the Marine Sergeant said, not unkindly, but firmly. War Primarch Threxus, you are under arrest for violation of surrender terms and attempted genocide. You will face trial for war crimes. Threxus was taken into custody. The rest of the Grinned fleet withdrew peacefully, collecting their dead and departing Sol system under human escort. The Battle of Earth was over. The war was over. Humanity had won, but more importantly, humanity had shown that it could win without becoming the thing it had fought so hard to stop being. 3 days later, on a neutral space station, peace talks began. Ambassador Sarah Chen represented humanity. Celtics, now acting leader of the Grinned military after Threxus's arrest, represented the Grinned collective. Silith attended as an official observer and historian. These are our terms, Chen said, laying out a document. Full peace between our species. The 3 disputed colony worlds remain human territory, but we will allow Grinned mining operations on one of them, with profits split equally. No reparations for the war. Both sides suffered losses demanding payment would only breed resentment. Instead, we propose mutual cooperation, technology sharing, cultural exchange, a defense pact. Celtics read through the document carefully. These terms are generous, more generous than we deserve after attacking you. Punishment is not the goal, Chen explained. Peace is the goal. We learned from our own history that harsh peace terms only lead to future wars. The goal is to create a peace that lasts, not a peace that humiliates. Why? Celtics asked. You could demand anything. You won completely. Chen smiled. Because we remember what it feels like to lose. We remember what it feels like to be conquered, to be humiliated, to want revenge. Those memories taught us that the only way to prevent future wars is to end current wars properly. With respect, with fairness, with an eye toward the future, not the past. War Primarch Threxus stood trial 2 months later. The evidence was overwhelming. He had declared an unjust war. He had violated surrender terms. He had attempted genocide by trying to crash his ship into Earth. The penalty could have been death. Instead, Admiral Reeves testified on his behalf. War Primarch Threxus is guilty of the charges, but I ask the court to consider that he is a product of his culture and his training. He was raised to value honor above wisdom, pride above pragmatism. He made terrible choices, but he made them believing he was doing right by his people. I recommend rehabilitation, not execution. Let him learn why his choices were wrong. Let him become an example of how beings can change. The court sentenced Threxus to 20 years of service as a diplomatic envoy. He would spend 2 decades traveling the galaxy, speaking about the war, explaining what he had learned from his mistakes. It was a punishment worse than death for a proud warrior, but it was also a chance at redemption. 5 years passed. The galaxy changed in ways no one had expected. The war between humanity and the Grinned collective became required study in every military academy. Not because it was a glorious victory, because it was an example of how to fight a war properly, how to end a war properly, and how to build peace. Afterward, New Hebrides was rebuilt, not just by humans but by Grinned volunteers who came to help repair the damage their war had caused. The colony became a joint settlement, humans and Grinned living side by side, proving that former enemies could become friends. Zilith published her historical account of the war. It became the most widely read document in Galactic history. She titled it The Sleeping Wolves: Why Humanity Chose Peace. The book explained in detail how humans had evolved as a warrior species, how they had nearly destroyed themselves, and how they had chosen to change. But also how they had never forgotten the lessons of their past, preparing for threats even while hoping those threats would never come. The Galactic Council passed a new law, informally called the Know Your Enemy Act. Before any species could declare war on another, they were required to study that species' complete military history. The goal was to prevent conflicts based on ignorance and pride. Human military academies began accepting students from other species, not to teach them how to be more violent, but to teach them how to think strategically, how to understand the true cost of war, and how to build lasting peace. Former enemies studied together, learning from humanity's hard-won wisdom. On Earth, in a quiet restaurant in Geneva, Sarah Chen and Threxus sat across from each other. 5 years had changed the former war primarch. He was thinner, humbler, his scales dulled with age and regret. But his eyes were clearer now, understanding things he had never grasped before. "I owe you an apology," he said. "A formal one, for the record." "The court's already handled that," Chen replied. "You have served your sentence well. The speeches you have given have probably prevented 3 other wars from starting. That is worth more than punishment." "I still do not fully understand," Threxus admitted. "Your people are terrifying. You have weapons and tactics that could conquer half the galaxy. But you choose peace. Why?" Chen was quiet for a moment, thinking about how to explain. "Do you know what the worst part of war is? It is not the dying, though that is terrible. It is not the destruction, though that breaks hearts. The worst part is what it does to the people who fight. It makes you hard. It makes you numb. It teaches you to see other beings as targets instead of people. Our ancestors fought for so long that they almost lost their humanity in the process. They became what they were fighting against." She paused. "We chose peace because we looked in the mirror and did not like what we saw. We decided to be better, not weaker. Better. Strength is not just the ability to destroy. Strength is also the ability to build, to heal, to choose mercy when you could choose violence. But you remembered how to fight," Threxus said. "When we forced you to?" "Yes," Chen agreed. "Because forgetting would be foolish. Our history is part of who we are. We carry the memories of our wars, not with pride, but with sorrow. We remember them so we can avoid repeating them. But when attacked, when forced to defend ourselves, we use those memories. We become what we must be to survive. And then, when the threat is over, we put the weapons down and become human again." Threxus clicked his mandibles thoughtfully. "Your species is very strange. You are warriors who hate war, killers who value life, strong beings who choose gentleness. We are complex," Chen said with a small smile. "Like most species if you look deeply enough. The difference is that we have 12,000 years of painful lessons teaching us who we are and who we can be." On New Hebrides, now called Unity Colony by both humans and Grinned who lived there, 2 children played in a park. One was a human girl named Maya. The other was a young Grinned named Kelthix, named after his grandfather who had helped end the war. They were building a castle out of blocks, arguing about the design, laughing at each other's jokes. Above them, a memorial stone had been placed. It read, "Those who cannot remember the past are condemned to repeat it. Those who remember it choose better." This colony was once a battlefield. Now it is a home. May it always be so. An elderly man sat on a bench nearby watching the children play. He was missing one arm, lost in the Battle of New Hebrides. Governor Rebecca Torres sat next to him, also older now, also scarred from that fight. They came here often, remembering the friends they had lost, honoring the sacrifice that had made this peace possible. "Do you think it was worth it?" the man asked. "All those we lost?" Rebecca was quiet for a long moment. "I think they would say yes. They did not die to kill enemies. They died to protect home, and look what their sacrifice built. Peace, understanding. A future where human and Vryn children play together without knowing they were supposed to be enemies. I suppose that is worth a few thousand lives," the man said. "No," Rebecca corrected gently. "It is not worth it. Every life lost is a tragedy. But they gave their lives so that future generations would not have to give theirs. That is the burden we carry. We remember them. We honor them, and we make damn sure their sacrifice meant something." In deep space, the Thermopylae patrolled the border regions, a watchful guardian ensuring peace was maintained. Admiral Reeves, older now but still sharp, stood on his bridge looking at the stars. Behind him, his crew included humans, Vryn, and a dozen other species. The Terran Defense Fleet had become a model for multi-species cooperation. "Sir, sensors are clear," his tactical officer reported. A Vryn named Thex, son of one of the warriors who had died at New Hebrides. He wore his uniform with pride, serving alongside former enemies who had become comrades. "Good," Reeves said. "Keep scanning. The day we stop being vigilant is the day we invite another war." "Do you think there will be another war?" Thex asked. "Eventually," Reeves said honestly. "The galaxy is big. Conflicts happen. Resources are limited. Misunderstandings occur. But maybe, if we are lucky and wise, the next conflict will be solved with words instead of weapons. And if it cannot be solved that way, at least we will be ready." Thex nodded, understanding. He had learned from humans that being prepared for war was not the same as wanting war. It was simply being realistic about the universe they lived in. On Earth, in the deep archives under the Rocky Mountains, the military history files remained open and accessible. New cadets from dozens of species came to study them, learning the lessons humanity had learned through blood and suffering. They learned about strategy and tactics, yes, but more importantly, they learned about the cost of war. The true cost measured not in territory or resources, but in lives and futures and possibilities that would never exist. And in a small office on the council station, Zealith added a final entry to her historical record. "The war between humanity and the Vryn Collective ended 5 years ago today. In that time, not a single shot has been fired between our species. The peace has held because both sides chose to make it hold. Humanity demonstrated that they were capable of terrible violence but preferred peace. The Vryn learned that strength without wisdom is just brutality and fancy armor. And the galaxy learned that the most dangerous species is not the one that loves war. It is the one that understands war completely and chooses peace anyway, because they know the true price of victory." She closed her terminal and looked out at the stars. Somewhere out there, humans and Vryn were building new colonies together. Former enemies were becoming friends. Warriors were becoming diplomats. And the children of both species were learning each other's languages and cultures, building bonds that would make future wars unthinkable. It was not perfect. Peace never is. There were still tensions, still misunderstandings, still beings on both sides who harbored resentments and grudges. But it was better than war. So much better. And if another conflict came, if someone else made the mistake of thinking humanity was weak because they chose peace, well, the wolves would remember how to hunt. The warriors would remember how to fight. The strategists would remember the lessons written in blood over 12,000 years of history. But until that day came, humanity would continue to smile, to trade, to make friends, to build peace. Because that was what they had chosen to be. Not warriors, though they could be when necessary. Not conquerors, though they could conquer if forced to. They were humans. Complex, contradictory, capable of both terrible destruction and profound compassion. They were the species that had climbed out of their own darkness and decided to be better, and they would defend that choice with every weapon they had ever invented and every strategy they had ever learned. The war was over. The peace had begun, and the galaxy was safer for it. That was worth remembering.